Hi, welcome to the video. My name's Dychronic, and today I wanted to talk about my top 10 PvE heavies in Destiny 2. And of course, as always, I have made a spreadsheet for this video, which can still be found at my Discord server, link in the description down below, on the channel #SpreadsheetStocks. If you don't see it right away, it's probably because you haven't verified with the bot yet. And of course, these spreadsheets really take a lot of time, and this one specifically took like 20 to 30 hours because the DPS testing takes a long time, and a lot of these weapons are very weird and have special effects. So if you want to see these continue, please consider checking out my Patreon, because without your help on Patreon, I may have to stop making these spreadsheets. Or if you have some time and you'd like to help create these spreadsheets, damage testing, copy and pasting, let me know on Discord or Twitter, because I could always use some more help. These things take a lot of time. And hey, here's some cute animals on screen, just so you know that I appreciate you coming by. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. On screen right now, this is my spreadsheet. All of its beautiful dark theme, color-coded information about like how to do certain quests and information about certain catalysts and like what they do. And of course, variations of weapons and the top 10 for all of these weapons. And of course, on the right side, we have the DPS spreadsheet. It's probably my favorite part. It's probably your favorite part too, is just seeing how much damage each of these weapons do, each of these perk combinations, and all this whatnot for all the weapons I consider. Keeping in mind that I can't have every weapon because this spreadsheet's lagging a lot as it is. And this is currently organized by DPS. You can in fact download this spreadsheet and organize it however you want, but I also have some charts at the bottom if you wanted to take a look at the total ammo damage or the DPS in a more visual way. First up, for the first major category, we have the heavy machine guns. And in general, heavy machine guns are not performing really that well outside of some of the exotics. And even some of those are not doing that well. Firstly, heavy machine guns are easy to use. They can be used at pretty much any range, and they have a lot of ammo, meaning they're very piecemeal, which means that they're actually a decent option for Grandmasters if you're wanting to use them for match game. I've used them many times. However, I've found these days that the linear fusion rifles have taken over that particular use, and I don't use them as often. When it comes to the different options, 450s are the best in my opinion, and the 360s are close behind that. Again, if you're just using it for bopping shields, both of them will work. When it comes to the best of the best, it's probably going to be the Xenophage. As probably many of you are not surprised, it's really good DPS compared to some of the other ones, which are closer to like 12,000. So it's like 4 times the DPS. And still probably around the same amount of full ammo damage, and much easier to use because you can miss and explode on them. Well, maybe that came out wrong. Now, a lot of people are probably wondering, how does Grand Overture fit into the mix? As you'd probably expect, it's not really doing that well, but full ammo damage is very surprising. At 1.6 million, it's above most of the weapons in the game if you're using the missiles around half the time, if you expect to die a bit, if you expect to miss a bit, etc. Now, the big problem with it is that it's so hard and annoying to use. That extra charge time at that first shot, the cadence of those shots, the shot taking time to travel to the target, the shot missing targets entirely, even the good burst DPS of those missiles, and the fact that its total ammo damage is high don't make me want to use it. So Bungie, I would implore you to just make this easier to use, or at least more satisfying to use, because it's really not that far off of being a decent option. Gotta like wash my mouth with soap or something. Ugh, I can't believe I said that. I've said many times I hate the Grand Overture. Up in the next major category, let's talk about linear fusion rifles. Now, linear fusion rifles are doing incredible things last season because they did double the damage with particle deconstruction. And obviously they don't have it this season, but they're still very good full ammo damage sources. A lot of these legendary options, Threaded Needle, Tarantula, Reed's Regret having firing line, by the way, are really good options. Now, when it comes down to it though, Sleeper Simulant is far and above way better in almost every way. First of all, it doesn't have nearly the crit modifier, meaning that body shots are okay compared to like the 4x crit modifier, making those other ones a little harder to use. Secondly, way higher DPS. Thirdly, much higher full ammo damage, and the catalyst makes it a little better with faster charge time and I think bigger pockets. And here comes the big issue when it comes to Sleeper Simulant, is that it's a solar weapon that you maybe want to use for DPS or full ammo damage on a boss fight. And Galhorn and 1K and Deathbringer are just doing better in almost every way. And that's the big problem with Sleeper, is there's better options. But if you don't have the 30th anniversary or these other options, Sleeper is still a great option. In the next category, let's talk about grenade launchers. In my opinion, probably the most underrated type of weapon these days, especially some of those legendary weapons. First up, when it comes to legendary options, let's make this clear, 120s are better than the 150s in every way. They do more damage per shot, they have better DPS, and they have higher total ammo damage and a higher blast radius. There is zero reason to to pick a 150. When it comes to the 120 options, there's only two that really come to mind, the Interference 6 and the Typhon GL5, a new one. The Interference 6 has a number of amazing perks like Spike Grenade, it has Full Court, Swashbuckler, has auto-loading, and Clown Cartridge. It has so many amazing options. I personally prefer the Spike auto-loading Full Court. The Typhon GL5 does not have Field Prep or auto-loading, but does have Spike Grenade and Explosive Light, which is technically a better DPS option if you actually have it and have enough orbs for it, and is a really nice option because it's different, but it's also really good because it has a damage perk. None of the other 120s have a damage perk. And admittedly, the full ammo damage is very similar to that of rockets, so why are people saying that they have terrible full ammo damage? Just hit your shots, lol. Beyond that, we also have the Parasite and Exotic option for grenade launchers, which the base version is doing about the same full ammo damage as rockets with damage perks, and the DPS is around that same amount too. If you add in the burst damage capabilities of getting those extra stacks times 10 or times 20, and you're hitting it out of the park with some of the highest DPS in the game. I say some of. It is literally the highest DPS in the game, more than that of Celestial Nighthawk, although maybe not as much as Falling Star. And on top of the full ammo damage, which in my opinion is the much more valuable part about it. Use this in a Grandmaster, get a bunch of kills with this, you see a champion, you see a big boy with yellow health, you pop out this thing with times 10 or times 20, and you dump out a huge amount of damage. You can also shoot it at your feet and do extra damage with your weapon. And the other side of the coin, we have the Anarchy, which a lot of people have forgotten about because they nerf them against bosses. If you consider the damage they do against bosses and not bosses, it's still incredibly high full ammo damage and great to pair up as a DPS combo with another weapon. You shoot 2 on a target, switch to your special, and dump with both weapons at the same time. Or shoot 2 at the target, hide behind cover. You are safe while doing damage. Don't sleep on Anarchy. It is better than people tell you to. Although, there are better options these days. I personally prefer using Wither Horde and using a heavy weapon to combine into that. In the next category, let's talk about the swords. Now, the legendary swords are actually not in the top 10 anymore. However, if I were to continue it, it'd probably be around number 11, number 12, especially with Crown Splitter being in that mix and a lot of the other swords being very similar to each other, and a lot of options that we have across Vortex frames, Caster frames, and Adaptive frames. All of them having very high full ammo damage and pretty high DPS, although being dangerous to use because they are melee based and often more usable in the lower type of PvE or in enemies that don't fight back, or at least when you're in a bubble, which is when you probably see them the most. That being said, I find that Lament is actually still really good. At number 7, the only sword in the top 10, it has a number of amazing things to it. First of all, its burst DPS is incredibly high, some of the highest in the game. Just while you have full energy, going in with those Banshee Whale hits and getting that heavy attack at the very end, really good damage, and the highest full ammo damage of any weapon in the game, which is usually how most people are going to be using it. They're not going to just go in and swing the entire time they're using it. They're going to wait for that full energy. On top of that, which is probably a very important part, is that you heal. You heal through the damage, which not a lot of healing, but enough healing that most enemies won't kill you. It's also barrier rounds, which makes it an okay option for Grandmasters, and have used it in Grandmasters, but not the best because it is still dangerous. And of course, in the last major category, we have the rocket launchers, which should come as no surprise. Not only do we have rocket launcher based stuff in the artifact, we have Galhorn, but also we have so many other rockets that are amazing, but we also have Galhorn. When it comes to the legendary options, for the most part, it doesn't really matter what archetype you use. We have found that they mostly fire at about the same fire rate when you keep in mind they have to reload after every shot, and they also do about the same amount of damage. Now, technically this season they did adjust it because the precision frames fired slightly faster fire rate than the other ones for some unseen reason. They adjusted it so precisions do slightly less damage and the other ones do slightly more damage, but precisions are still doing a little bit better. However, the more important part is going to be if they have the damage perks that you want. Impact Casing, Explosive Light, Lasting Impressions, faster reload like with Field Prep or auto loading or Impulse Amplifier. These are the things that matter when it comes to a rocket. My personal favorite these days is going to be using Palerma because it has Explosive Light and auto loading, and you can have the enhanced version, which I'm still working up towards and I look forward to. When it comes to the exotic options, which are obviously dominant, at number 4, we have the Deathbringer, which a lot of you probably forgot about, considering that it's somewhat difficult to use. You have to get the catalyst to make it even better, because it makes those extra damage happen faster. And of course, at the maximum, keeping in mind, the maximum, if you hit all 7 of those rockets on the same target and it has the maximum damage, you can do technically better than Galhorn. But then, Galhorn, just with the catalyst and just firing at the target and not caring, is just below that. So take that with a grain of salt. You're probably just going to be better off with Galhorn most of the time. So now let's talk about Galhorn. Now, Galhorn came in with the 30th anniversary and is technically a paid DLC weapon, is a returning Destiny 1 exotic that was previously overpowered, and in my opinion, is the de facto best heavy in the game by far, for a ton of different reasons. First of all, its DPS with the catalyst is some of the highest in the game, and not even trying to do anything special with it. Its full ammo damage is higher than pretty much all the other rockets in the game. It has also the Wolfpack rounds, which is part of the extra damage it deals. It gives those Wolfpack rounds to your teammates, which means they can use legendary rockets with Witherhoard or Izanagi at the same time. It also has built-in tracking and proximity explosions, making them ideal for Gambit, both invading and anti-invading. Ideal for Crucible, which, because tracking is always nice, and those extra Wolfpack rounds hit enemies all the time. And it doesn't stop there. The Catalyst gives it 2 in the tube, obviously making the DPS a lot better, not affecting the total ammo damage. But it also makes it so Wolfpack rounds, whenever they get a kill on a target, they spawn bigger, faster, higher damage Wolfpack rounds, which admittedly, I don't notice that often, but must be doing a ton of stuff. So in recap, Galhorn is good at Crucible, Gambit, PvE for Grandmasters, and for Raid DPS for total ammo damage. It's good against Solar Shields, it's good against Champions, it's good against Arc and Void Shields, it's good against Adslang, it's good against Majors. It's quite frankly good at almost everything in the game. The only thing holding Galhorn back is that it's an exotic, meaning you can't use a legendary option, and it's not a champion round. Although, technically, if you put yourself in a Seek and Filament Rift, it does overload rounds, so keep that in mind. Obviously, Galhorn does need to be changed. It cannot last like this for very long, but obviously it's a paid DLC, so they'll probably leave it for about a year and then do something about it. And lastly, I wanted to talk about some miscellaneous weapons that don't really fit in these categories, or weapons that will be changing very soon. First up, 1000 Voices at number 3 is one of the best weapons in the game. Obviously, it doesn't have particle deconstruction like we had last season, making it probably worse than Galhorn in most of the scenarios. It still has very good full ammo damage, very similar to that of legendary rockets, and much better DPS in a lot of scenarios. The only downside is you have to go in the last wish and get a chance of dropping on that final chest. After that, we have the Whisper of the Worm, which is doing better this season after being able to get a little bit of free ammo if you're nailing those white worm or white nail stuff. Although, in my opinion, they still need to buff snipers across the board like they had in Shadowkeep, or between where we have it now and where they had in Shadowkeep. But do not touch Izanagi's ×4. You can touch the regular shots of all the other snipers, just don't touch Izanagi's ×4. Also, might want to consider not touching Cloud Strike, as it's still pretty strong, but Izanagi was the only problem. We need snipers to be better. For one of the honorable mention, we have Eyes of Tomorrow. Next season, it will be getting a buff to do more damage against bosses, so they're gonna kind of revert the change they made to it. And a lot of people have been thinking that, oh, friendship ended with Galhorn, but the DPS of this is still very low. It takes a long time for those shots to come out of the rocket, although the full ammo damage will become very spicy with that increase in damage. And the last honorable mention, I wanted to talk about Leviathan's Breath, which is not doing that great these days. Even though its full ammo damage is pretty high, its DPS is very low, and it takes a long time to pull back. For the most part, Sleeper Simulant is just better DPS, better full ammo damage, and more comfortable, outside of obviously doing champion rounds with Leviathan's Breath. Now, next season, they're going to be buffing it in a ton of different ways. They're going to make it so the Archer's tempo effect to fire faster is even better than regular Archer's tempo. They're going to increase the damage overall by about 50% and split the damage between impact and detonation, making them less dependent on headshots, and overall roughly doubling the damage against champions, making it an ideal weapon, pairing up that total ammo damage and extra damage to champions and unstoppable rounds, making an ideal thing for Grandmasters. So next season, expect it to do some backflips. And of course, again, a big thank you to my patrons on Patreon. Again, these spreadsheets they wouldn't be possible without my support on Patreon, because these take a long time. And if I were to get a part-time job to fill in that income gap, I wouldn't be able to make these spreadsheets. They take 20 to 30 hours every week. So I want to give a big shout out to some of these Patreons, specifically a big shout out to Mom and Dad, Christian Thompson, Kellyanne, Ostrek, Dickerberg, Monday, C. Black, Winnis, Unipanther, and Casey Reagan for their support on Patreon. I do hope everybody did enjoy this video. I hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Dychronic, and I'll see you guys on the next one.